Blake. Elliot, you've worked in the world of comics, you've worked in film, television, audio drama, podcasting. We now have a book, and so a novel. And so, very curious to talk to you about your creative processes.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
really cool to be here, and it's funny in all these other areas, especially the TV and audio. I'm not usually the guy that gets to step forward and talk about the work. So it's usually somebody way more famous. So it's nice to it's nice to have the opportunity. So I definitely appreciate it. Um, but the journey, huh?
The
Um,
journey. Yeah. What led you to storytelling? What led you to the written word?
it started early for me, and I had a teacher. I think it was third grade, Mrs. Hugelmeyer, who encouraged us all to write stories, and we to put together a little book. And my parents still have it, but the very first story that I wrote was a thing called the Big Mac Attack, and which is exactly what it sounded like. At 8 years old, I think, very. I recently had my first Big Mac, and I was like, "This is great." And then I don't know where I heard Big Mac Attack. I'm pretty sure I didn't come up with that myself. And I wrote a little story about Big Macs attacking people, and there was a lot of, and then people fighting back, and there was a lot of ketchup, blood ketchup, although, it should have been special sauce ketchup. But, that's me, many years later, realizing, giving myself a story note. Um, but I think that's really where it started. And I got such a kick out of it that storytelling had always, from that point on, it was always part of what I was interested in doing, and something that I just did. I mean, I can't say I'm prolific, but it was always something that was uh, important to me. I guess a way to express myself. I mean, I certainly I think looking back on it, it was just something that I enjoyed doing. I don't know that I wasn't really plumbing the depths of the soul or anything, that's for sure. And I think that's probably true with a lot of the, yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not prolific. There wasn't a lot of writing, but even through college and post college, when I was writing screenplays and trying to figure out how to become a screenwriter, I think I wasn't quite tapped into you know the why of the writing as much as the fact that I enjoyed the process. I liked figuring out a story. But I think the work that I've been able to do as a producer over the last probably, mm, I don't know, 5, 10 years it really helped me kind of hone in on um, more of the why of the story than some of the earlier work. I think some of it was just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? And then stumbled into something that maybe felt a little more, I don't know if profound is the right word, but that certainly felt like it may have been deeper than it was. I would say that's probably true of the graphic novel, the crime graphic novel that I wrote. It's a comic. It's 52 pages. Calling it a graphic novel makes it seem more grandiose than it is. But
I think graphic novel fits totally. The
all right,
package,
the
correct?
package, yes, yeah.
Hmm.
So, which uh, started out. Gosh, I don't even remember how it started out, but I think I just had this idea. It's like, well, what would happen if you had I mean, the conceit of the story is that there's a hitman who is sitting in Mexico waiting for a package. Is sitting in a safe house, and the package never really comes because there isn't a package. It's there. He and his partner have been sent down there to be killed, and but he survives, and then he is compelled through the implantation of bomb in his chest to go and kill his old boss, or he'll get blown up. And I think I found as I was writing that there was something to say in there about the human condition, but it started with, hey, what would happen if a hitman was compelled to, go do a job by a crazy person who puts a bomb in his chest? And so I don't know. Stories have weird origins, I guess.
Reading the Ray Bradbury intros, like he'll come up or came up with titles and then took them in interesting directions. So there's always that birth story, and I know that Into the Great is science fiction. I was going to ask
Yeah.
a little bit about the origins of science fiction, but it sounds like that started early. Big Macs attacking. That's definitely science fiction.
Yeah, I was an early Star Trek lover, and
Hmm.
then when my dad took me to see Star Wars when it came out when I was 7, and I'm sure I'm not the first person who has said this to you. I'm certainly not the first person who has ever, who I've ever heard this say this or who has said it, but Star Wars changed things for me in a huge way. And that was the beginning of my love of science fiction. And it's, and it really is my favorite genre. It's because you can do anything in science fiction. You can kind of tell any kind of story, and you can really, I don't know, you can be fantastic while still writing about the now, which I think the best science fiction, that's what the best science fiction does.
Yeah, what was the spark for Into the Great? Where did the concept come from, and anything that you want to say about the book for listeners?
Sure. Well, the uh, the the spark of it came really. So it started out as a comic book. I had intended to write it as a comic, and it was going to be a digital first comic that took advantage of some of the interesting um, transitions and storytelling techniques that you do if you're working in a digital format. And it's not like, crazy bells and whistles. It was still like, I think if you read a comic like on a tablet, you can there's a couple ways to do it. You can read the full page, or you can kind of go panel by panel. You just tap and the panel moves, and you can do some interesting storytelling techniques that way. And that was kind of the heart. What was the start of it was like, huh, what kind of a story can I tell? And then from there. I realized that I could tell a pretty interesting story of two characters and have the stories unfold kind of side by side on the screen, and eventually have their paths cross. And so it started out kind of as a technical experiment, and then it evolved into a love story of sorts that was set in space. And then we tried to kickstart it and did not reach our fundraising goal. And I kind of put it to bed for a few years. And then I was working for a video game company as a creative consultant. And the publisher of Into the Great was also working as a creative consultant on the business side, or actually, he was a business consultant. And We just got along great. And after we had wrapped that job, he reached out and he said, "Hey, I'm starting up this little publisher called Little Factory, and I'm going to publish sci-fi stories that I find interesting and that are different, and and that I probably will never make any money on. But if you have anything, I'd love to hear about it." And my mind immediately went back to Into the Great, and because I have a hard time of letting stories go or letting ideas go, sometimes to my own detriment. You work on something for a long time and it never comes to fruition, which certainly in the entertainment business is normal. And But I thought, I really like this story, and I think that there's something to it. And so the question for me was, from a creative standpoint, was, can I write prose? Because
Mhm.
I had been working in TV and media for so long, and everything is scripted, and the scripted format, everything is in present tense, and you're describing just enough to give the idea of what's supposed to be happening in a scene, and it's largely dialogue heavy. But I'm sure your listeners know, and it's like, prose is different. That's way more interior, and so it was a there was a real challenge to that, for me, kind of figuring out how can I even do this. And so, but I thought, let me give it a try, and I just I'd wrapped up my uh, show that I produced for Apple called The Sisters Grimm, which is a animated series based on the middle grade book series by Michael Buckley. And I had some time on my hands, and I had spent so much time over the previous uh, 10 years, really, um, trying to shepherd other projects that I wasn't the writer of forward, that I thought it was time for me to kind of get back to telling some of my own stories. And so I thought, all right, let's give this a try. And I sat down and I started trying to write in past tense, and I couldn't. So I was like, okay, let's just write it in present tense, and at least just see what happens. And so I started adapting the comic book script, and I wrote half of it and sent it off to the publisher, and he read it and he liked it, and he said, well, it's like, I'm 95% sure that I'd publish this. Why don't you finish it? And so I did, and he liked it, and then the work really began, which was great, because I got excellent notes from him, and I got fantastic notes from uh, a series of editors that really and that really pushed me past where I think I probably would have gone if I was just publishing it on my own. It kept, like, the publisher, David, kept saying, "What else can you do? How can you go deeper?" And and this was not like stuff that I hadn't, like, I've asked this of writers that I've worked with, and but I hadn't really necessarily asked it of myself. And so you really, having that push was probably the best part of the process, because I think it connected to me to my writing and storytelling in a way that I hadn't necessarily been connected before on my own stuff. Um, and so it was a fantastic process, and also I did figure out how to write in past tense, and which is good. Now I can do it. I just needed to develop that muscle, which had atrophied, because I hadn't written anything in prose since I was in college, and that had been a few decades. Um, so I don't know. It was a great experience. I was really lucky, I think, to have the feedback that I had from the people that I got it from. And so, yeah, boy, that was a really long-winded answer. I'm not even sure I answered
No,
the question.
no, I think that's great. And it's great to hear about the creative process. And there's so much to unpack there about how stories come together and how work comes together. And you mentioned like that muscle getting atrophied, and how like so many other areas in life we practice, we work, we practice. And so that fits really well.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, well, it's true. I mean, it's so much of writing is about rewriting and rewriting and practice. And I know that from working in other media and from talking to other writers, and I think it's something that for me, I just think I just needed to be reminded of it for myself. And so, and that, and one of the things that I was reminded of is that, that first draft doesn't have to be good. You can be, I think it's like be less precious about what
Mm,
you're doing. And I think I reached, I think part of it is just experience and part of it is age. And I think that you, at some point, you start being willing to be less precious with yourself,
mm, mhm,
and about what you're doing, because if you've been around enough and you've seen enough, that you start to realize that it's not that what you're doing isn't special. It's just that it's work. I think is
mhm,
really what it comes down to. It's work. And so, you're not necessarily, you might be writing something that winds up being profound, or great, but you don't get there without the work.
mhm, mhm. You mentioned that genre stacking with science fiction. At what point did you know that you wanted to include romance here, and how did you go about that? What was that like?
Well, uh, I I knew pretty early that with this story that was going to be part of it, because I guess I should tell you what the story is about, and your listeners. That would be a probably be a really good thing to do. So, I'm just going to read you the blurb, that goes out, to anybody that in the podcast world that might want to talk to me, from the public relations firm. So the book is called Into the Grade, and sparks fly when Lila, a thief from a struggling free spacer colony outside the borders of the Federated Solar Republic, meets Bax, an FSR security officer stationed at an official colony within those borders during a time of heightened tensions for humanity, as the silent, staring, seemingly invulnerable aliens dubbed the Orium begin to meddle in human affairs. This is a story about choosing the life you want to live in a time of unprecedented, rapid change beyond your control. And uh, so that's what the story is about. And
Lots to relate to.
Right. And I'll get into that in a moment. But as far as the romance goes, I knew that there was going to be essentially a thief and a space cop, and I've always liked stories where people from opposite sides of the track realize that they are supposed to be together, that they have more in common than they realize, and that maybe um, there's that separation is, that between them is, maybe it's artificial, when you get down to the brass tacks about what you want in life. And so it was important pretty early. I mean, and also I just think it's dramatic when you have a cop and a thief who fall in love. So, but that was also a really good way to get into explore the bigger theme of the story, which I didn't realize that I was writing about this until I was a draft in. And one of the editors said, "Hey, are you writing about now?" And I realized that I was, because I'd been articulating that, how, like, I was glad that I had something creative to do, while to distract me from everything that was happening in the world, especially around American politics. And I had also was keenly aware of the fact that it felt very lucky to me that I was able to get out of that headspace about being upset about what was happening in American politics, and to go and do that work. And how strange it was to be in the entertainment business and to be creating, uh, I mean, I was writing this, and I was also producing and getting ready to direct the third season of Moriarty, which is our show I did for Audible. And we're making entertainment, and at the same time that's happening, there's a autocrat coming back into power, and they're immediately setting about trying to jail people, and on a this retribution tour, and it's
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot to take in. And so and I was very grateful to have those distractions from that stuff, but I also couldn't look away from it. And that's kind of where what the theme of the story is. It's like you still have to live your life and choose how you're going to live your life and pay your bills and all of these things. Take care of your kids and make dinner while all this stuff is happening around you. And so in the story, that massive change that's happening around the characters manifests itself in first contact with an alien species that essentially has godlike powers, and just arrives in Earth space, and then also around the colonies that are in the Federated Solar Republic, which I imagine is about 4 light years across in all dimensions, in all directions. And but these aliens show up, and they are way more technically advanced than any humans, and they also they're humanoid, but they look like unbelievably, like they look like gods. And people start to think, well, are these the beings that inspired the gods of yore of mythology? But the crazy thing about the aliens is that they don't talk to anybody. They just show up, and they and in Earth space, and then they start transporting around and just staring at people, and which is very unsettling. And so they're called the Orium, which means it's I looked up I used a Latin translator, and it means golden. So the golden people, but the pejorative, the derogatory term that people come up with them because they are lurking is they're the lurkers, and but it's a hugely unsettling uh, uh, event, and it's an ongoing event that humanity is trying to reckon with. And while that's happening, are the main characters, Bax and Lila, are trying to deal with their own lives and the things that they want. And so while they're not directly impacted by the lurkers, the presence of the lurkers has an impact on their lives, and has an impact on everyone's lives. And they have some choices to make about how they're going to live those lives. I don't want to spoil anything because it's a short
Uh,
novel, and it's a short novel, and people will get through it pretty. Hopefully it's fast to read. I don't know. I've read it a lot of times now. I think it feels fast to me, but maybe it's just because I know I know it so intimately.
yeah, I was going to try to ask that next question in a way that doesn't give anything away, which is, what do you hope readers kind of are thinking about or asking themselves? It sounds like part of that is daily lived experience, just living and getting to the next step while there are these kind of cosmic or cataclysmic things happening around, which is it's kind of its own trauma processing kind of narrative.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, that's one of the things just as people we have to do. And I think what this is, I think it's a story in a lot of ways about resilience and forging on despite what's happening around you. And I think we see that in all across the world, and in places that have a lot more uh, unrest and a difficult time, or or more explicitly authoritarian leadership than maybe what we have now. And and I think about like Ukraine. They've been at war
Mm.
for, is it 4 years now, and five
Yeah,
perhaps, and but they're still finding ways to live their lives, and that is, I don't know. There's some inspiration to be taken from that, I think.
very true. Yeah, when you say that, like 2022, and yeah, the math on that, yeah, it's been a long standing event.
It's unreal.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've to switch topic just slightly back to something you were
Sure.
talking about earlier. You've worked in media and in the world of podcasting and comic book storytelling. Uh, how did that kind of shape your work here, moving from those spaces to prose?
Well, I think that I've what I found is that despite the differences in the formats, and is that what I found is that you still have something that you need to write about, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be a deep or profound thing, but the like what I learned working on the Sisters Grimm, for example. I mean, from like the books are very funny, and they are also sometimes dramatic, and then the working on the adaptation of that and trying to figure out, well, what was it that we wanted to say, and what did we want to explore, and the our showrunner, Amy Higgins, brilliant writer, and just being around, I learned a lot just being around her. And she keyed in on the fact that in that book series, is that the sisters Grimm, Sabrina and her little sister Daphne, have been separated from their parents, and they go to live with their grandmother, and and their parents have disappeared, and and that's a traumatic thing that happens, and we're had to figure out, okay, well, how do we tell a story about these kids who have gone through this traumatic thing and make it funny and make it relatable and make it dramatic, and so that, and to do it, I think, with a light enough hand that you could do it for a 6 to 11 audience, ages 6 to 11, without scaring them away or making them cry or anything like that. You want them to feel what the characters are feeling, and um, so I think that specifically was really, of all the things that I've worked on recently, like that was probably the most instructive, and probably influenced me the most, even though it was a kids show, and it was, it was, uh, there were no aliens in it.
Uh, I ask very often when I'm talking with people that have worked in comics, what do comics allow you to do, as opposed to other media? But in this case, what does prose let you do? How did that kind of open up and let you push yourself as a writer?
Well, it really came down to that interiority that I mentioned before,
Hmm.
and kind of exploring a character in a different way. I mean, it's like when you're in comics, or when you're telling a comic book story, or you're, like animation, or even like an audio drama like Moriarty, you you don't really get inside the characters' heads that much. And like in Moriarty, we do retreat into his thoughts occasionally, but you have to tell that story and communicate everything externally, and you do that, and that's true of visual media as well. I mean, especially visual media and comics. You can use, thought bubbles or captions to get inside of a character's head, and like Ed Brubaker, the writer of Criminal and so many amazing comics. Is master of this. Does a great job of using narration alongside Sean Phillips' pictures to tell a complete story. And the pictures are saying one thing, and the text is saying something else. But together, they are telling one story. But it's still but you get to rely on the visual
Hmm.
the visual media, the visual aspect of those comics, and you don't have that in prose. In prose, you have the words, and that's a huge advantage in a lot of ways because you do get to go inside the character's head and you do get to tell that story from an interior vantage point. And even if there's action and stuff like that, you want to know what is, how the character feels about what they're doing and what they're thinking about while they're, chasing a thief through a mine shaft, which is something that happens into the great. And it just allows you to approach that story from a different, or allowed me anyway to approach it from a different standpoint. And I really, uh, once I figured out how to do it, I really enjoyed doing it. It was, it just it's like like I said earlier, it's just a whole different set of muscles that you're flexing in that kind of storytelling. Um, and also it lets you paint a picture for the reader. Um, but it's a picture that they get to paint in their own heads. And, you don't have to, uh, you don't have to be granular even necessarily in all of that detail. You can just kind of evoke, you want to evoke something that makes uh that makes the reader feel like they're grounded in wherever it is that you're setting your scene. And you can be really descriptive, but you don't necessarily have to be. And you can more focus on the emotional aspects of the storytelling. I really got into it. I really enjoyed that part of it. It was great. Yeah, I mean, so I definitely am gonna do more of this kind of storytelling. I mean, I'm not done in other media either, but uh, I definitely would like to do more prose writing. Think I don't think I was too bad at it, and I really enjoyed the process. And the great thing about prose, and I say this as somebody who's been very lucky to have the projects that I've had in other media, is that I don't have to rely on anybody else to tell the story.
Hmm.
It's just and I don't have to ask permission to do it. And and by asking permission, I mean I don't have to go and get a budget, approved, or raise money to sit down and write a piece of, or to write a prose story. It's just me and well, usually starts out with a notebook, but then into a document on my computer, and um, and that's very freeing as a creative person.
Absolutely. I was going to ask what you're going to tackle next, so it sounds like there's a lot to come across media. And I was also going to ask where people can go and find out more and check out the book and things of that nature.
Well, what's next is a good question. Story. I'm developing. I can't go into any detail on anything really, but I am developing an animated. It might be. I think it's going to be an animated feature, but it could be a TV series in the YA space based on a graphic novel series written and
Cool.
illustrated by a friend of mine. And I am writing an adult animated feature, uh, which is I think it's going to be a musical, which is crazy because I am not musical at all, but I think that's what it has to be. And that has been a story that's been in my head for, oh boy, been in my head for a long time, at least a dozen years. And I wrote a TV pilot version of it, but I realized that as I was developing the TV series version of it, that it really needed to be a movie. And so I'm doing that, and I have an idea for how to do Into the Great as an adult animated feature as well. So I'll probably be adapting that at some point. And I've got a few other audio projects up my sleeve. One that I'm writing with another writer, and another project that I will probably produce and direct with my creative partner, Moriarty. So it's a lot of I've learned over the years that you need to have a lot of plates spinning if in the
Mm.
entertainment business in order to get anything going. So you just have to figure out how many plates can you keep spinning and move forward, and that's always the trick. Um,
Mhm.
but as for Into the Great, it comes out September 1st, and from Little Factory, and you will be able to find. I think by the time this podcast comes out, it will be available for pre-order. Um, that should be mid-July, and it will be at lilfac.com, Lilfac, and your audio listeners will not be able to. Oh, I'm sweaty, disgusting. Your audio listeners will
Good
not be
notice.
able to. I'm glad I did. The I'm vain, I guess. Anyway, the uh, Little Factory has three other books out right now that are available on their website. And I'm just going to hold them up on camera now because they're really beautifully bound
Yes,
little
they are.
books, and with these gorgeous cloth covers, and they're affordably priced, and you can get them for a nice bundle price at lilfac.com. And the books are Burns by David Polfelt, who is our publisher, which is about a robot probe traveling through space for many millennia. Very funny. And then a really original piece of work called Brain Fruit by an author named Stephen Oram. And it's all I can say. It's just really, I'd never read any science fiction like that before. It's really cool. Um, and then another story called Mimeograph. That's this one, and it's sort of about I'm probably going to butcher this, but sort of about a runaway 3D printer that somehow taps into people's consciousnesses, and that's by and I'm going to butcher her name, Era A. Ekre. And so anyway, these are all the current Little Factory books, and they're really terrific. I highly recommend them. And let's see, you can, yeah. So I'd say just go buy them.
Into the Great is joining that lineup very
Into the
soon.
Greatest joining that lineup. Yeah, I'm really thrilled. I think if you asked me a year ago, Elliot, do you are you going to write a book? Or maybe a little more than a year ago now, but like, are you going to write a book? I would have said, no, I don't think so. But it wasn't on my bingo card. But now that it's happened, I could not be more thrilled.
Well, cool. Well, glad you're working in that space and all the spaces. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to include as part of the conversation?
Well, if you are interested at all, you can follow me on Blue Sky. Just Elliot Blake .bsky.social. And where I do post occasionally about comics, frequently about the Baltimore Orioles during baseball season, and way too much about politics. So if you're not into that, don't follow me there. You can find me on Instagram at Elliot Blake, ELLIOTBLAKE, and I don't do any politics there. Mostly pictures of my dog and that kind of stuff. And oh, and then I would say go if you haven't listened to Moriarty. That's a absolutely brilliantly written Sherlock Holmes riff, written by Charles Kindinger, who's my been my creative partner for the last 5 or 6 years, and just a brilliant writer. And it's just really it's a lot of fun. And we got to have Helen Mirren in season 2 and Ben Kingsley in season 3. And that's other two other things, people that on my bingo card that I never would have imagined that I would get to work with. So, so I would definitely recommend that. Check out The Sisters Grimm on Apple TV. But really, when Into the Great comes out, I'd be honored and thrilled if you bought it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, wonderful. Well, I can't top Helen Mirren by any means, but
Few
certainly
of us
glad to have
can.
you back here anytime. Helen Mirren is the dame is her own thing.
She is.
But yeah, but certainly glad to have you back here anytime to talk about any upcoming project, and it's been a delight connecting with you.
Likewise. Thanks very much for having me. It was a blast.